Well, after all the build-up and everything that we've been leading up to this season, what are we left with? With a much more subtle finale than expected, but just as satisfying as one could possibly be. Hey guys, come over the season finale of The Americans, Season 4, Episode 13, Persona Non Grata, and obviously I was so looking forward to this finale. I mean, I have not been this hyped for an Americans episode in a while, probably since, the season started is the last time I was so hyped, but all season I've just loved the hell out of this season. It has been so impactful. There have been so many big things that have happened, and I really didn't know what was going to happen in this finale. I mean, because of the way things were set up last week, it really seemed like we were headed for a huge, just very eventful, and really, a lot of crazy shit could have happened in this episode. But that's the thing I really love with this episode, is that I don't think, was this the best episode of the season? No. Was this as good as a finale? Was this as big as a finale as I thought it was going to be? No. But it was extremely satisfying, and I think it was pretty much what they needed to do, because we're only on season 4. They can't do anything too big yet, because they need to make sure that the show ends as satisfying as possible. In order for them to do that, they need to save some of those big reveals that we are all waiting for seasons 5 and 6. And I like that they didn't reveal anything too big, but there are some huge things that come up in this episode. Still, there were some incredible scenes here, and definitely a really great finale. I think even better than last year's. Last year's was good. It just was kind of underwhelming, but this year's was a lot better. I really loved it. A lot of great emotional scenes, and especially some of those cliffhangers we definitely do want to get into, and definitely seems like we're heading in a much different direction next season than expected, but let's just get into this episode because there's a lot to talk about. And right away, we kick things off. Right away, we see, and also, first of all, let's talk about the whole issue that happened on FX. I don't know what happened exactly. If you guys knew about the DVR issue, I don't know what happened. FX said it was, an hour and 14 minutes. It was an hour and 14 minutes. People thought it was going to be an hour and a half. I don't know why people thought that, but I thought it was going to be an hour and a half. It wasn't. It was only an hour and 14 minutes, but I think it was the perfect length, definitely. Let's just get in this episode, though. So we start off right away. We see Stan and Aderholt are in their car outside of William's apartment, and they're there. They have the information they need. They're ready to make a move on him. William's inside packaging the deadly new biological warfare that liquefies your organs and completely is oblivious to the fact that the FBI has figured out that he is KGB. It's a really terrifying scene, just knowing that they're there. I mean, it's so thrilling because anything could happen at any moment. Stan Aderholt catch up to William catch up to Stan Aderholt, and what could happen to them, we don't really know what could happen here. I mean, this could end up with catastrophic consequences, and we know that William, he's very nervous, and he's not trustworthy, that's not the word, but he's not as good with hiding things as Phillip and Elizabeth are. Definitely, I think that definitely is the word. So I love the way that started already. Things were really set in motion, and we really didn't know what was going to happen, but you could definitely tell that things were about to get very crazy very quickly, and I really did enjoy that. Love the way that was done. Perfect opening to the episode. So at home, Elizabeth heads to Paige's room to talk to her, because obviously they had that huge argument last week, and I like that they did kind of clear things up here. Even though things aren't better between Paige and Elizabeth, they're kind of moving on from it. You can definitely tell. They see Paige was a little put off that her parents didn't want her help spying on Matthew, because obviously they were spying on him. Why can't she? Why can't she get information out of him? Why can't she do that? And Paige tells her mom that she wants to learn how to defend herself in case they are ever in danger. So she's actually thinking about possibly, becoming one of them, because she thinks this might be what she has to do. And maybe if she has to kill, she needs to learn how to be trained for it. And Elizabeth agrees to teach her a few things. And I think while this isn't really, the ideal decision for Paige, it's not really what she wanted to do. I think she knows that the best thing for her to do is to go in this direction, is to follow her parents' footsteps, is to right the wrongs of what they do, and basically finish what they clearly can't really, what they started, and what I don't really think they're going to be able to finish. I think Paige is going to be the one to really finish that, and we really do see that here. I really love the conversations here between Elizabeth and Paige. I think Kerry Russell and Holly Taylor, both incredible in this episode. Matthew Reeves was great too, but this was definitely more Paige and Elizabeth. I really did enjoy that. Really good stuff there, and really, just really different than what I thought was going to happen, but I'm happy it did, because again, you can never predict what's happening in the Americans, and I like that they did go in an unexpected direction. So William leaves the apartment, heads out to meet up with Phillip. Stan and his team are tailing him. If Stan and his team are tailing him, and at any, I mean, the fact that Phillip is right there, I mean, is just terrifying, because at any second Stan could find Phillip, he could realize who this is. If Phillip says anything, he'll know right away it's Phillip, because they're so close. And William recognizes the FBI cars tailing him. He starts running down the street. William runs to the park, breaks the vial of biological warfare in his hands. Right before the FBI moves in to arrest them, they surround him with their guns drawn. He warns them that they might want to get him to the hospital, and he's now been infected. He's infected with the virus. He is now highly contagious, and we pretty much know that William is going to die. And I think I kind of knew that William was not going to last this season. Just the way this was going, it didn't really seem like William was going to last more than one season. It always seems the way, like, they have one agent or a character like that that's only on for one season and then they leave. William was that character this season. Now, it was awesome to see his character have stuff to do, but this is clearly his last episode, and it's very sad to see when that stuff got on his hand. I was like, no, why did it have to happen to him? The worst possible thing that could have happened happens there. So, basically, meanwhile, Phillip is waiting at their meeting spot. William's a no-show. He doesn't know why he's not there, obviously. He just knows that William didn't show up, and he finally gets up, heads home, and this is something I love, that Phillip is not at all affected by this situation. He just knows that William obviously didn't show up, and there's a reason why. He doesn't know what that reason is. He doesn't know why he's not there. All he knows is that he was supposed to wait for William. William didn't show up, and for whatever reason, he's not there. And I thought it was a very well done scene, and much different than I thought. You know, this wasn't at all like Echo, but I think it was just as intense as the season 2 finale. Echo was Phillip and Elizabeth, you know, in on all the action and basically facing everything and could have, you know, died at any minute or dire circumstance like that. This was them still a part of the action, but not actually in the action, if that makes any sense. Like, they're still a part of it, but they're just not really the one facing it. But they are going to, any consequence that happens with William will absolutely affect them, and we definitely do see that here. So, obviously, you know, it's a very interesting situation the way it played out. I did not think that was going to happen that way, but I really did like that. And again, very unexpected direction, but very well handled. So Phillip then heads home, tells Elizabeth that William didn't show up because obviously, you know, something went wrong, and they have an alternate meeting place tomorrow. He'll try again to get the biological warfare from him, but obviously the biological warfare is destroyed. It's now all over William. He's infected, and Elizabeth changes subject. She tells Phillip about her chat with Paige about their old lives in Russia, and you can see that these two, they're starting to bond over this. You know, they're realizing that they have to tell Paige this, and again, this is something I love it. They can't hide anything from her anymore. They're telling her literally everything, and it's good because this is exactly what she wants. She's getting those answers, therefore now she can trust them. They're not hiding anything from her. Because she asked them, you know, do you trust me? And they do trust her. It's clear they do. She wants to take over the family business. You can definitely see she wants to. I don't know if she wants to, but she knows she has to, and she's kind of preparing herself for it because she wants to be prepared. Should something like what happened in episode 11 happen to her again, you know, she wants to be prepared. So, very well done. And then we get these scenes in this episode where I didn't really know what was going on here. We see in Russia, we're at this gulag, and there's this kid named Mikhal. He's called into the office, and we don't know who Mchale is, you know, why we're seeing, Mchale is his name, not Michael, Mchale. We don't know who this guy is, you know, why we're seeing him, and apparently he was locked up for complaining publicity about the KGB. He has important friends, though, so they're trying to say that he's mentally ill and didn't mean what he was saying. The prison director tells Mikhal that they can guarantee his release if he stops talking badly about the Russians, because clearly he's not okay with the KGB. He is Russian, but he doesn't really like the KGB. He talks shit about them, and it's really interesting. Now, again, you don't know who this character is, and that was what was so intriguing, is when we eventually realize who this is, it's probably one of the most genius reveals that the Americans has done. But again, it was so subtle, and the American just works so well with subtle reveals, which is what this entire episode is filled with. Nothing is in your face. Nothing is as big as it seems, but it is just as big as, you know, it's much bigger than it seems, and I'll get into that. But I love the way that was done. I didn't expect that at all. I'm like, who is this character? You know, for a second, I'm like, is someone about to die? I didn't really know what was going on here, but basically, we'll get more to this a little bit later. William's in a hospital. He doesn't look good at all. You can tell he's going to die, and the doctors working on him are wearing protective gear. He appears to be under quarantine, and Stan and Aderholt are watching through a glass window, and even though they're through the glass window, they're just as destructive as they were before, because, again, they're trying to get information, and Stan speaks to William through a microphone, and even though William is on the verge of dying, Stan is, you know, trying to get some information, because he's desperate for answers at this point. Now, I don't think Stan Stan realizes that William is dying and how lethal this really is, but Stan asks William if there is anything they can do to make him more comfortable, and William tells him that it doesn't matter, he will be dead in a few days, and there's nothing they can do whatsoever. He's not giving them any information, because obviously he knows he's going to die, and he's not going to withhold this information to them. It doesn't necessarily affect him if he does, but he's not really going to tell him anything. I was thinking he was going to tell him everything, okay, he's dying, holy shit, he's going to expose them. That's what I thought he was going to do, is in his last dying moments, he would just tell them all, because he's dying and he doesn't really care. But that's not what he does. I thought it was really smart what he does, that he just says, look, I'm dying, it doesn't matter, I want to die in peace, leave me alone. That's clearly what he does, and they don't stop, because they're so persistent that they're thinking they're going to be able to get something out of him, but clearly it's not really working. So Oleg meets with Arkady, who really hasn't had much to do this season, I have to say, but I kind of do like that Oleg has had a lot more than Arkady. Oleg explains to him that his mother isn't doing well since his brother's death. He turns in his final report, says that he is heading back home to Russia. They say their goodbyes, and Arkady's leaving. I don't know if Arkady's necessarily leaving the show, but Arkady's going back to Russia, and it's a really interesting development, especially because where the end of this episode leaves us, the fact that Arkady's going to Russia is really interesting, the fact that he's going there, but he has a reason for going there. He's there obviously because of he's been relocated, so I think that's really interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing where that's going to go. But he's been relocated. I think it was a good goodbye to Arkady, but just as good as, like, Martha's goodbye, where we don't know if we're going to see him again. I'm sure we will at some point, but right now it kind of seems like this was a final goodbye, but I don't really know, which is something, again, that the American just does so well in, is that you don't know if this really is a final goodbye. You're hoping it's not, but it kind of feels that way, and I like the way they didn't really finalize anything here. That's something that the Americans does really well, and something that they did even, just as well in this episode. So Elizabeth then heads home. Paige is doing her homework, and I loved this scene between Elizabeth and Paige because, again, things are not great between these two. They're clearly trying to stay cordial to each other, but you can really tell. I mean, it seems like every time they meet up that they're about to get into a huge fight, and they're clearly not trying to do that. Paige says that Pastor Tim called, and apparently his wife had the baby, and Elizabeth says that they should all go see them tomorrow, meet the baby, but Paige thinks that she should go first all by herself. She's the closest to them, and that's the best thing to do, and especially after all they put Alice through. We know that Alice really does not want to see Phillip and Elizabeth after what happened with Pastor Tim, but Elizabeth offers to give her a gift to take for the baby. Paige wants to know where Phillip is, and again, I love that Elizabeth didn't, hide anything. She explains that he is at S. She has a tough time trying to explain what the seminar is all about because she, as we know, doesn't really understand it. We know when she went to S, she didn't really understand what it was about, and she didn't really get any impact from it whatsoever, and I'm wondering if Paige is going to end up having to go to S. I don't really know. I feel like that's what might end up happening. I mean, honestly, I think it's the best thing for Paige. She's been under so much pressure this season. It might be the best thing for her to get therapy. I kind of feel like that's where we're headed, but I'm not really sure. I just kind of feel like that might be the best thing for Paige, though, is to actually physically get therapy and actually get some help. It might just be the best thing for her. But Phillip's having a meltdown at S. He's speaking to the class. He confesses that he hates his job as a travel agent, and we know he's talking about being a spy. We know that obviously he is, in fact, he's not a travel agent. He is a spy, and I love the way this scene was done because we've known since season 2 that Phillip is wanting to get out of the KGB. He's never had that chance, and now he's hating it even more. The fact that, he's lost Martha, the fact that, you know what happened to Martha, the fact what happened to even back to, Annalise, what happened to her back last season. I mean, there was that. But now it's ripping his family apart, and now it's really personal, and it's only getting worse and worse, and the situation is not getting any better. The problem is the one person that their handler is, he does not let them stop. They have to give in to his every demand. He lets things go the way he wants them to, and it's just hell, it really is, and I really did feel bad for Phillip here. A lot of this season has really gone through Phillip's personal pain. I think this scene really did show that, as we know, we really did get more into Phillip's personal past this season. I love that we went there, and I love the way this scene was done. Amazing stuff there, really good the way that was done, and Matthew Rhys, as usual, really sold it in that scene. So Gabriel calls Elizabeth and Phillip to the safe house for a meeting. He tells them that William is MIA. He isn't returning any calls. He says the FBI have gone to him, and he knows that obviously, whatever happened, they are in trouble, and definitely this can't end well for them. Gabriel's worried. He thinks that William may expose them all, and obviously this isn't a concern considering William will be dead soon. Now, again, we kind of are wondering, though, is William possibly going to expose them in his last final moments? I was really thinking he was going to do that. Just the fact that he's dying, is he actually going to do that? And that's the thing I love, is that they don't know that William's dead. They just know that William is with the FBI and he could, expose them at any moment. And obviously, this is a very dangerous and difficult situation. They have to handle this as delicately as possible, because honestly, it could go really bad for them. And that's something I really love, is that, again, like I said, they're not totally in the situation, but they're just a part of the action as William is, even though they're not directly in the action. That's the only difference, that they're the ones not really experiencing it. They have to deal with the after effects. If William does anything to them, whatever William says will affect them. Whatever he does affects them. And if he says anything that sounds suspicious at all about them, then this could really affect everything. I mean, they'll have to change how the relationship is with Stan, everything, and I really did not know how that was going to go. I love the way that was done, because you don't know if William's going to end up ratting on them. Just the fact that he's dying, you're not really sure. So Mchale is released from prison. He heads home to a crowded and poverty-stricken house, and an old man takes him aside, has a package for him. Again, we don't really know why we're seeing Mikhal. I'm like, what is the point of seeing this character? Why are we seeing him? I figured we were going to see him next season, but I couldn't really tell. And he tells Mikhal that it came from his mother before he was arrested, and it's full of Russian cash and passports, and Mikhal apparently is going to use the money to find his father. He's a travel agent in Russia, and he is none other than Phillip's long-lost son. And yes, I love the way this was done. I mean, I freaked out when this happened. I can't believe we're finally meeting Phillip's long-lost son, and I'm very happy we are, because we've heard talks about it very subtly throughout these last 2 seasons, but it hasn't been a huge deal. But it seems like next season it's going to be a huge deal. He is going to track down Phillip. They're going to reunite, and what's going to happen there, we don't really know. If he's going to find Phillip, how is that whole situation going to turn out? How is Elizabeth going to have to deal with someone that she doesn't even know? Who is the mother? I mean, that's something I'm wondering, if we are going to find out who maybe the mother is. We don't really know, but this is Phillip's long-lost son, and I'm looking forward to seeing how that's all going to turn out. So amazing stuff there. I did not expect to meet that character at all, but again, a very well done reveal, very subtle, but just as effective as everything else that happened this episode, and really sets us in a much different direction than I thought we were headed for season 5, and I really do like that. So the FBI then pays Arkady a visit. They confront him about William. Of course, Arkady denies their allegations, reminds them that they all signed a treaty saying that they wouldn't develop biological warfare. And yeah, they're not the ones involved in it. They had nothing to do with it, really. And Agent Wolf shouts that the KGB has gone too far. He accused them of killing Agent Gad, and they know that they got to Martha. And Wolf tells Arkady that he has 48 hours to leave America, and it's probably the worst thing that Arkady could ever face, but he really has no choice. He has to leave. He has to get out of there, because it's clearly not safe, and also because they don't trust him whatsoever. And it's really just showing how worse things are getting for KGB. They're being treated like slaves, really. They don't really have a choice but to relocate to Russia. If you're told to relocate, you have to relocate, and that's something that Arkady doesn't really want to have to do, but he has to do. And I like that we didn't really find out, was Arkady the one that set up, all those agents to Gad? We don't really know. I think that overall is really interesting. Was he the one that basically got Gad killed? I mean, that's something I don't know if we're ever going to find out, and I really do like that. But again, we didn't really finalize this scene, so we don't really know if this is goodbye, and I really don't think like it is, because the way this episode ends up ending, I don't think it's goodbye, but I don't really know if it is. Really interesting overall, really the way that was done, and very good scene. So Stan and Aderholt are still watching William die through the glass. He tells Med how lonely he has been working as a spy, and again, he's not revealing anything. He's just saying he felt really lonely, because yeah, he was kind of alone. He didn't really have anyone with him. He's done this all on his own, and all he's really done is fuck things up. I mean, even though he tried to save them, none of his missions worked out. All of his missions failed, and you really do feel bad for William because of that. I mean, you can see that William really does care. He wanted to be a good, spy. He wanted to do this right, and everything he did failed. And I feel like he feels like he's dying as a failure. And if William weren't to die, I feel like he would have committed suicide, because he kind of sounds suicidal here, and it's very interesting the way that was done. But you can just tell he's going to accept his death. He's not really going to say anything. And Stan and Aderholt's still watching through the glass. I think it's just because they want to see, what he's going to say to them. If there's anything they can get out of him. Even if it's the littlest nugget that they can get out of him, it'll help them, because they need at least just a little bit of information, and then they're good. Like I said, they're slowly catching up to Phillip and Elizabeth, and it's really, eerily, scary how far they are, how close they are to catching up to those two, because it's really interesting the way that's turning out. I can't wait to see the way that whole situation ends up. But Philip and Elizabeth then meet up with Gabriel. He tells them that they are in danger with William in custody, and he tells Philip and Elizabeth he literally says this to them, which I thought was huge. I think we knew this was going to come up eventually, but never this early, and I like that it's coming up now. He tells them to pack their bags and go home to Russia with their kids before they wind up arrested. He literally says, look, you're going back to Russia because it's not safe here. And Paige is totally oblivious that she may be in Russia within 24 hours, heads to the hospital to meet Pastor Tim and, his wife's new baby, and it's just so crazy the way this is done. They might actually have to go back to Russia, and they're shocked by the idea of returning home. They head to their car, sit there in silence, and it was such a well-done scene because really, how do you react to that situation? What do you really do there? I mean, you have to go back to a place that you really don't want to have to go back to. You want to stay in America. Even though things have not gone well for them, they want to stay in America. They want their kids to have a good life. And now, especially for Paige, she's the one I feel the worst for because especially what ends up happening with her at the end of this episode, I really do feel bad for her the worst out of everyone, but it really is crazy. I mean, it was a crazy revelation that came up. I never thought of that possibly happening, but yeah, I mean, it seems like that's where we're headed, that everyone might be going back to Russia, and as crazy as it seems, it's not too far off. I think it makes sense why they might be going back to Russia. I think it makes sense why that might be happening. Very well done, and I really am interested in seeing if that's actually going to end up happening. Are they going to go Russia? Because we don't really get a decision by the end of this episode if they actually are headed there or if they have a completely different plan. I mean, we don't really know. All we know is that Gabriel said take him to a safe house, go to Russia, and then get out. So we don't really know what they're going to do. So Oleg runs into Tatiana at the office. She tells him that Arkady doesn't want to be bothered right now. He's sitting in his office drinking, and he's upset about being sent back to Russia, because apparently Oleg's also going back to Russia, mainly because, again, the fact that the FBI has William, it's only a matter of time before they get everyone else. So it does make sense, obviously, because obviously the FBI is hot on their trail. They could get to any one of them at any point, and really, it's just as delicate a situation for all of them, and the best thing to do is to leave and go back to Russia, where it's not as dangerous there, because obviously that's filled with Russians, and Tatiana will be running the place until his replacement arrives. He breaks news to her that he's leaving and heading back to Moscow. He needs to be with his family, and that, Oleg's not going to Russia, but he is going to Moscow to be with his family, which I think is where we thought he was going, that's the best thing to do. He knows his mother's not doing well after his brother's death and everything. The best thing to do is to go back to Moscow, which I think he wants to be with Tatiana, but I think at the same time, he wants to be with his family. He wasn't there when his brother died, it was really hard for him, and I like the way that turned out. I like that, I like that he, was going back to Moscow. I like that he made a decision on his own. I like that he didn't really let Tatiana choose it for him. We know that she was possibly going to Nairobi. It seems like she's not going there. And also, someone did remind me that Oleg actually hates Africa, so there was really no chance he was going there with her anyway. So I think either way, he would have definitely made this choice. Whether Arkady leave or not, he definitely would have made this choice, and that's definitely what he would have done. So William is on his last breath. He, at this point, he's going to die, and he's coughing up blood. But before he dies, he tells Stan and Aderholt that the agency always wanted more from him. They were upset because he didn't get married, but he tried. He tried to find someone. And I love the way this scene was done, because he talks about all the failures and errors of his ways, but the things that he tried to do, because he did try. And he talks about another spy who got married to a pretty woman, and how lucky he was, and he was this close to revealing who those two people were. I mean, we know who he's talking about, and you can tell that he's kind of jealous of Phillip and Elizabeth. He kind of wishes that he was them, because they're actually happy. They actually turned out with, with two kids, and William's ended up with nothing. He's been all on his own. He doesn't have a wife. He doesn't have kids, and I love the way they just got us to care so much for William. I mean, William's been a main character all season, but he's been more of, giving them missions rather than actually a character. Not that he hasn't been a character, but I don't think we got this much development till this episode. I really love the way this was done. I think it was as satisfying as it could have been, and I absolutely love that. Just the way you don't want to see William go, honestly, because you feel so bad for him. But like I said, he was so close to revealing who those two people were. And I think Stan and Aderholt, for a while, they've known that they're obviously following a married couple. They just don't really know who that married couple is. I mean, Gad, of course, told them this. So I feel like they're very close, and I feel like next season they're bound to find out. It's gonna happen next season. It has to. I mean, it's I feel like it's going to. I think it's gonna be like a Justified situation where they find out next season, then season 6 is the aftermath, because that works so well for Justified. I feel like it will work just as well for the Americans. Just the way that it's going, I feel like it makes sense. So Elizabeth and Phillip return home, and obviously, I mean, this is probably the worst thing for them to do because they have to act like everything's normal. They have to act like they don't really know they have to act like everything's calm and that they're just coming back. But really, they could be going back to Russia within 24 hours. And it's really an interesting scene because you don't really know what they're going to do. If they are going to go back to Russia, if they are just going to stay there, you don't really know. And we see Henry's sitting alone watching the Super Bowl. And I love that he's alone because, again, Henry's the one that really is the loner in this family. He has no idea what's going on. And they never tell Paige either. Even though they said that they will be honest with her and not lie to her about anything, they never tell her. And we don't know if they tell her after this episode, but they don't tell her in this episode. So Paige is at Stan's house watching the game with Matthew, and these two are clearly getting a lot closer and pretty much doing the exact opposite of what Philip and Elizabeth told them not to do. But I like that. I like that Paige is rebelling against them. They talk about Stan cheating on his mom, and I love the way the scene was done because he talks about how, you know, Stan cheated on Sandra and everything, and how he's made fun of for it. And Paige talks about how she thought Phillip was having an affair, and he wasn't. And she talks about how it's good that this is happening because shit happens. And that's immediately what happens. They start making out on the couch. It seems like they're gonna have sex because he like pulled her shirt up, and I'm like, okay, they're gonna have sex, I guess. And I legitimately thought these two were going to have sex. That's what I thought was going to happen, is that they were going to end up sleeping together. But Phil then heads over to Stan's house to get Paige, because basically they want to get Paige, obviously, is how what's going on. Stan is thrilled because he walks in on Paige and Matthew kissing, and to him this is a great thing, obviously, because, you know, to him this is just neighbors bonding, and that they're getting along well, things like that. He makes jokes about them getting married, saying this can be like Father of the Bride, which I thought was honestly pretty funny. But Philip obviously isn't as amused, because he knows really why this is so bad, and why this can't ever happen. And he tells Paige it's time to go home. She awkwardly says her goodbyes, and it's really sad because she has to leave. And Elizabeth watches from her bedroom window. Philip and Paige walk across the street. They head home, and that is how the episode ends. That's how the season ends as well. An incredible end. And of course, Elizabeth has no idea why Philip is so upset as he is. She doesn't know what Paige just did. She has no idea what could have happened that night. I mean, really anything could have happened. But one incredible way to end the season. Really just crazy stuff. But let's get into what I think next season is going to be, because obviously there's a lot to talk about. So while this was a very subtle finale, it was just as huge, because of course there's this idea that they all could be going back to Russia, and this would be the worst thing for Paige. Paige is getting really close with Matthew. These two seem like they're going in a relationship direction. Like, it's not just friends. They're going to start a relationship, it seems. And she might not be able to do that, because if she has to go back to Russia, then that really ruins everything for her, because she wants to be a normal kid and she wants to live a normal life. But at the same time, she knows she's going to have to train. And it's really interesting the way the Paige is developing. I think she's starting to realize that certain things just need to happen. And it's really kind of out of her control, really, what she does. And she's kind of over it. You know, as sad as it is, she's kind of over it, and I do like seeing that. It's a quick decision, but it makes sense why Paige is realizing this, because I think she's just realizing that she's gonna have to become KGB, and there's really nothing she can do about it, but she wants to go on with her life, and now she's not gonna be able to if she has to go back to Russia. But are they going back to Russia? We don't really know. I mean, are they going back to Russia? What's really gonna happen there? I don't really know. I'm assuming they're going back to Russia because that's what Gabriel said to them, but are they actually going back there? We don't know. They didn't say anything to Paige. So, and also, what could have happened between Paige and Matthew could have just ruined everything, because it seemed like those two were going to have sex. If Stan would not have walked in, they probably would have had sex, and things could not have ended well for anyone. I mean, Paige could have gotten pregnant for all we know. Those two would have been a lot closer intimately, and that just could have made things really bad for Phillip and Elizabeth. And I don't really think Paige cares as much, because it's her life, and I think she's allowed to have a life, but obviously anything she does now affects Phillip and Elizabeth even more than ever, and I do really love that. I think it's really interesting overall, but it's also very sad because Paige, like I said, can't really have a normal life now, mainly because they might have to go back to Russia. And Oleg leaving, I think that definitely makes sense. But now that Mikhal is already in Russia, I think it kind of makes sense why they're going to Russia, because that way Phil will meet up with Mikhal. How are these two going to connect? That's one of the things I'm most looking forward to next season, is how these two are going to connect, what's going to happen there. I had no idea we were introducing him, and I'm very happy they did, because he already is adding a lot to the show that we didn't have before, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they end up doing with Philip and Mikhal, because that's something that Philip's wanted all his life, and now that his son's out of prison, he's tracking him down. I mean, we don't really know what's going to happen there, because Elizabeth, I don't really know how she's going to handle that. I don't really know what's going to happen with that. That's going to be really interesting as well. This is definitely not the last we've seen of Arkady, especially since most of our cast is going to Russia. I think this is definitely not the last we've seen of him. The only thing is Stan. Is Stan gonna still play a role next season? I mean, I'm sure he will, but if they're going back to Russia, what role does Stan play next season? Does he follow them to Russia? I don't really know. I don't think Stan would just follow them to Russia. I don't really, honestly, maybe he will because he's that desperate, but he does know that it's a man and woman. He does know that they were obviously connected to William, and he does know that he needs to track them down. So I don't really know what Stan's going to do with this information. It's really interesting overall, and they really couldn't have gotten caught. I mean, I think if William would have lived and he wouldn't have flatlined when he did, I think he probably would have given them the information. I really think he would have. I think he would have said the names because it's clear he was jealous of them. He wished he had their life. Even though their life sucks, they at least were successful. He was never successful in anything, and I think they set that up really well. I love the way that was done. And then as far as Oleg goes, I mean, I'm not surprised he made the decision he did. I think it totally makes sense why he made that decision, why he went the direction he did. I really did love. And then as far as Paige and her parents go, I mean, I don't really know what direction we're headed with that. Just the amounts of it I'm next season, I honestly don't know. I can never predict what's going to happen in this show. But overall, guys, this season was incredible. I loved every minute of it. You guys know, I think this is the best season the Americans has done. I mean, I thought season 2 was, but no, this season was. Every episode, it kind of felt like a standalone on its own. And what I mean by that is that every episode you could watch on your own and be like, okay, that's amazing. Even though you could watch it and you wouldn't know what's going on, you just know that it was amazing because every episode this season was so monumental and so much happened, and there were so many huge things happened throughout the season. I mean, there were characters, there were two major deaths. You know, there were many losses. You know, both literally and both figuratively for our characters, and I really did love that. We went in some really dark directions, and really just it's a dark show. It's always been a dark show though. It's not really a show that's like, oh, it's just dark all the time, because no, there are some lighter moments like what Stan said that was actually really funny. But because that, guys, of course, as I said, I'm going to start rating TV seasons, and because the season is over, I am going to rate the American season 4, and I'm definitely going to give this season 4 of the Americans a 5 out of 5 or an A+. Without a doubt, this was the best season the Americans has ever done. It was shocking, it was revealing, it was sad, it had some incredible scenes. I mean, this really just everything I wanted in the show. It made me love it again. Not that I didn't love it last season, but it made me love it in the way that I love season 2. I think this totally top season 2 was so much better than it ever could have been, and I can't wait to see where we're headed for season 5. I'm sure they're going to be able to top it. At this point, I don't know. I'm sure they will, but at this point, it just seems kind of impossible because as the show is as good as it is now, it's only going to get better as it goes on. I can't wait to see where we're going in season 5. But overall, guys, I know you guys saw this season and where you think we're headed next season. I honestly don't really know what's going on next season. I mean, there are really a lot of possibilities. Maybe they go to Russia. Maybe they don't. Maybe they have a completely different plan. I don't really know. Something big is going to happen next season. I'm pretty sure Stan's going to find out next season. I don't really know, though. This season was incredible. I loved every minute of it. I thought every episode really was amazing, especially for Paige. This really was Paige's season, I think. And it was Phillip and Elizabeth's as well, but really was Paige's season because it was very focused on her. We really are starting to see where Paige is going. You know, while she is joining KGB, she's really doing it in her own way, and I really do love the way that that's going, that even though she does want to train, she wants a future with Matthew, and she's probably going to make sure that happens, you know, even though her parents going to tell her no. I feel like she's going to make sure she does have some sort of future with him, because those two are getting really close, they bond over a lot of things, and I really do love that. Something else I did forget to say about the episode real quick is that what are they going to do with Henry? Like, how are they going to tell Henry this situation? Like, Henry's the only one that doesn't know that his parents are KGB, and I feel like that's going to end very, very soon. I've heard a lot of people say that Henry's probably going to find out next season, and yeah, if it's not going to be on his own, it's going to be from Paige. I mean, we didn't see a lot of Henry this season, but I feel like that was intentional because Henry's the one that's alone. I mean, we saw him with Stan and everything, but besides that, I mean, he's facing the daily problems every kid faces, and I feel like it's about to come to an abrupt end, especially if they're going to Russia. That's going to be really interesting. Also, Martha, I mean, are we going to see where Martha possibly went? I mean, they confirmed that we are going to see Martha again before the show ends, so I feel like that's definitely going to happen next season as well. I mean, really, the possibilities are just endless for next season, where we're going to go, how they're going to explain all this. You know, are we really going to Russia? That's going to be really interesting. I don't really know, though. Are they really going to go to Russia? Are they going to have some other option? I feel like with Phillip and Elizabeth, really anything is possible. I mean, I feel like what the reason they wanted Paige is because they're going to get her, and they're all going to sit down, and they're really going to try to figure out what the best thing is. Paige, you can tell, doesn't really have a say, though, again. I mean, she kind of is just doing whatever they tell her to do, but she's doing it on her own terms, like I said, so I don't really know what they're going to do if they are going to Russia, if they're not going to Russia. Very interesting overall. Don't really know what's going to happen there. But again, that was something I just thought of. I completely forgot to talk about it. I thought I should talk about it. I don't really know what happens with Stan and everything. Like I said, Stan's probably going to find out next season as well. We'll have to see what happens with that. But overall, guys, what you guys thought of this season? Love to hear your thoughts on it. What you think of this episode in general? What did you think of this finale? Was it satisfying for you? For me, it was incredibly satisfying. Even though it wasn't as big as I thought, it was just as big, subtly, but not, like, big as an action. I still thought it was a very big finale. I can't wait to see what happens next season. I will see you guys in my next video, which will be for Feed the Beast, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.